If I get snatched up, what are they going to call me?
Yeah.
And they're going to be right. And they're going to say he's a counterintelligence agent. He's a spy. I'd become so comfortable with death. I'm still very comfortable with my own demise. It breaks my heart, and I wanted to be able to save him, but I would talk to him on the phone, and I'm like, hey man, for real, how you doing? And then he would say, I'm doing terrible.
You got some cool guests like Mike Baker and Dan Crenshaw, and like I know there's way more than that, but those are the couple that jumped out at me because I'm like, those are Joe Rogan dudes. Like, that's badass.
I love to be of service to other people. One of my best friends that I've met through the show is a guy named Scott Husing. He's a veteran. He's a commander, Marine in Ramadi during the Second Battle of Ramadi.
All right, my next guest was a real-life spy, not the Hollywood kind, but someone who's embedded in war zones, navigating life or death situations while decoding human behavior. P.D. Turner is a former U.S. Army combat spy who's run over 1,000 missions in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. Pete is now a podcaster and host of the Break It Down show. Pete, I've been digging into your stuff a little bit. You've had some incredible guests on there, and looks like you've lived an incredible life, and can't wait to kind of jump into your story. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate you.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. And, guys like us who've done things and left home to go do things, we get to see the world from a different point of view. And I love sharing those stories because, look, we're going to resonate on a lot of things that we've talked about. And it's not, look, for sure, stuff from home, we're going to resonate on that. That's given, right? But the stuff outside of home, that's where it really becomes powerful when you open your eyes to a new world. And I love that part of what we get to do when we have shows like ours.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a combat veteran as well as yourself. You took a different path. You became a spy, which I didn't even realize. I knew the Army had, intelligence, but it sounds like you were a little bit more in the secret society of the Army.
A little bit. I mean, look, some of that is me just marketing myself, right? It's 100% true. And
yeah.
A lot of my peers will say, you're not a spy. We don't do spying kind of things in the legal definition. And I'm like, motherfucker, what? Can I swear? I hope I can say
yeah, for sure.
If I get snatched up, what are they going to call me?
Yeah.
And they're going to be right. And they're going to say he's a counterintelligence agent. He's a spy. And what am I there to do? I'm there to undermine them. So,
Yeah.
like the guy who handled Elder James, if we could find that person and put them in jail as a spy, they would. That's exactly my job, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I say that, it's true, but it does make a lot of my peers uneasy because you're supposed to protect these things. But I'm a little more matter of fact about it. Even when I'm deployed, I tell people what I'm there to do. Yeah, and I've been asked, "Are you a spy?" I'm like, "Yes, yes." And I'm going to ask you questions. And if I ask you a question you don't like, don't answer it because I'm not going to make you. I'm not here to force anybody to do anything.
Yep. So kind of backing up a little bit, how did you get into that? Did you join the service and go into counterintelligence or spying right away, or did you have a different MOS?
Yeah. I went in directly as a counterintelligence agent, and I had no intention of joining the Army. I was in college and graduated, and I just could not find a job. And so I just, I like, man, yeah, I have to do something. I was actually at Costco in Pleasant Hill. Maybe it's Martinez over there. But I was pushing carts in the rain, and I'm like, that's it. I'm not here to do this. And there's nothing wrong with working at Costco. Heck, I loved it. It was a lot of fun. But I had to do something else. And so that was when I ultimately joined. So I went from never thinking about it to joining in about 30 days.
Oh, wow. Did the recruiter push you in that direction, or was it just something that you figured out on your own?
That's a good question because I genuinely think my recruiter did a great job. I went to go see, so I was at Costco before this time, and we were stocking, me and another college graduate guy, and he had gone to DLSL, which, as you know, very prominent school, very successful. He'd had a more prominent degree, and he's like, I can't find a job. And it was the same thing for me. This is 93.
Mm-hmm.
And the economy was pretty bad. Like, back then it was like the worst time since World War II to get a job, that kind of thing. And so we were both stuck, and we didn't know how to get unstuck. And I had developed the lead into KGO, the major ABC news channel in the Bay.
News Talk 810.
My dad don't like it.
Raised me on that.
Yeah. So we met a field reporter, and I was at Costco, and he showed up in his Pinto, and he's like, yeah, I'm off to the next thing. He's like, yeah, if you want to come check it out, I'll take you down. I'll get you in. We'll tour you around and introduce you to people. He did all of that. And they're like, yeah, we'd love to have you come back as an intern. And I'm like, well, I'm not in school anymore. I'm graduated. They're like, well, then we don't have any use for you.
Oh man.
I know. And I'm like, oh shoot, what am I going to do? And so I had to do something else, And so that's when I got to thinking, and that guy who I was talking to, he's like, I think I'm going to go become a spy. And I was reading Tom Clancy novels, and I'm like, yeah, I got to do something. Like, I want to be a news reporter, but I don't know how to get that job. I can't seem to reliably find it. And I don't want to continue to stay on this path if that means staying here at Costco and waking up 20 years from now being like, I manage Costco. Again, nothing wrong with that field, but I wanted to do something else. And so that got me thinking about it. I went and saw my recruiter, and I didn't know at the time. It's like the whole, like, every storefront is a different service. And so I just kind of went shopping, and a couple of them weren't even around when I was there. They were all out working in the field. And the Army guy, and I'm like, look, yeah, I'm glad to talk about this. Glad to take the test. You just got to do all that stuff anyhow. I'm like, but don't call me. Don't bug me, because I'm going to make this decision on my own. And so when he put me in count, so I scored up off the charts, like that test is not that hard, but once you scored a certain point, you're off the chart. Like anything you want, you can do. And I kind of described what I didn't want to do. And he's like, you want to do either intel or medical. And the higher the number of the job, this is my belief, the better the job in the Army. And so this is at that time. Their numbers are all different now. And I'm like, okay, cool. And he's like, so let's look at intel. Let's look at that. And he looked at interrogator. He's like, this could be cool for you. And then he's like, oh, counterintelligence, this could be cool for you. And so I decided, yeah, let's go intel, because medical was okay. I'm smart with science and all that, but that was it. And so ultimately we landed on counterintel. We watched the video. And we're like, we don't know what that is. He's like, if we don't know what it is, it's going to be cool. You should do it. I was the last guy that guy put into the Army. After that, he went back to being an MP. So I have no idea what his name was or anything, but he was fantastic. And we went to MEPS. They tried to talk me out of intel and put me into infantry and everything. He's like, no, this guy's
got to fill those slots.
Right, exactly. Well, he had a bigger bonus. And he's like, this guy's going to be an intel guy. He's going to be great. Leave him alone. Sign him up, just like I'm telling you. So he stood up for me, and I have no complaints about that guy. He, I'm one of the very few. It's like exactly what he said could happen happened. I had a lot of questions. I had no idea what I was getting into, but it all worked out.
Yeah, right on. So you obviously went through the training and everything. Back in 93, I assume 94, 95, there wasn't a ton of like in your face wars going on until 9/11. So were you still running operations, or was it just kind of a lot of training, stuff like that?
It's a good question. So the answer is that there was not a lot going on, and we didn't know what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were a bunch of old head guys in my field that were like, yeah, the Ruskies, because that's what they knew. And that was the battle that they had. And that was a lot more strategic, long-term type stuff. So like, you got to get to the Berlin field office, and like that wasn't even one at that point. Like not for me, like there's a lot of field offices around the world for counterintel people, but they're like, go to these places. But you really couldn't reliably get there because the Army's like, we don't know how many people we need there. We're not fighting the Russians. Heck, they're our friends now,
Yeah.
And so we were trying to sort that out. We did a lot of time. So what we did in Europe, which is where I went first, was we did background investigations and other kind of like things there's still always intelligence attempts to get at us, right? So we're still have a mission. So it's not like tankers where you're just kind of practicing and staying fit. We actually have this mission where it's like, who is coming after us? Where is it at? Who's being compromised on the American side? So we always have a mission to do, but it's like, you have to kind of find out where you can get in there and help that local commander. And they may not even want that. They may want education or something. So we were just sort of sorting it out. Primarily what we did was background investigations. That's primarily, we did some red team stuff in my unit, and it was a whole unit full of counterintelligence agents, which they don't really even do that anymore because there's not like this big Russian threat like there was back then. So that was us running around doing some training, but really not what I would say is like, not like it's going to impress anybody. Like this is stuff that if you knew how to do Army stuff, you could sit down and be like, I'm doing counterintelligence training. It's like, whatever. It wasn't like high speed or anything.
Yeah.
Right. It was a lot of it was just sergeant's time. And I'm not saying just sergeant's time, but for those watching, sergeant's time is like a weekly thing where you take half the day off and then you go get with your sergeants and you work on your skills in a variety of areas. And so a lot of it was just that. So I don't want to say there was no training, but it was very limited in scope, very limited in depth. A lot of people, we didn't know what to train for either. So we had 100 jobs we could do. mastery in none of them. And so that's where, and then we deployed to Bosnia to ensure the Dayton Peace Accords. And it just so happens, and this is important, it was the very dawn of the digital age, especially in intelligence. And we were the tip of the spear. If we were out there, because we weren't going to get into shooting fights, right? Because the shooting wasn't happening. Now that could quickly change. We didn't know at the time it wasn't going to, but for us, it was these counterintelligence people and these interrogators going as teams out into the field and talking to the locals. And so we drove that not conflict, but near conflict. And so, yeah, that was the first deployment, considered a combat deployment. Now it kind of seems kind of passe, but back then it was like, this is serious. There's deadly people out here. These guys have been fighting. There's been genocides. I mean, think about that. Like, we walk into a just ended genocide, maybe, and also continue on in other parts of the former Yugoslavian countries too. So we were there. The fight wasn't over, just happened to be over right there. And no one knew that. Part of our job was to ensure that.
Yeah. So obviously you did that, and then 9/11 kicks off, and that changes everything for intelligence. Obviously, I mean,
for sure,
people are deployed everywhere. You were still active during this time. How long did you stay in?
Yeah, so I wasn't active at that time. I'd gotten out in 99. So I did a standard 5-year hitch, and then I got out. And as you know, your obligation's not fully up, but at the time it's like, yeah, I could be done. And my wife at the time kind of got the itch to go back in, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? We could use some extra money. Why not? Like, I didn't leave the Army because I was fed up or anything else. It just, nobody had a good offer for me to stay. Like, nobody tried. And it's not me, it's our field. Nobody tried to keep me. We lose a lot of people. So and also my unit was a training unit. So there's a brigade, 5,000 people for everybody listening, in a battalion. And so the same size staff, and you have all these demands. And so they just weren't great at keeping me. So I'm like, I'll go back in. So I had to go back in through transportation in the reserves. Right. And so I'm like, but I'm really a 97 Bravo counterintelligence agent.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, well, you got to start off here, but you transfer over. And literally, like, across parking lot was an intel unit, but I didn't know that pathway. And so after a short amount of time, I ended up over there in that building. And then by then my time was so short because my 8 years really was coming up. And I hadn't even fully transitioned into the intel role because, like, my personnel file hadn't caught up ever in the reserves.
Yeah.
And so when my 8 years was up, my first sergeant was mad at me because I wasn't coming to drill. And I'm like, hey, man, my time's almost up. You have all these things I need you to do for a sergeant. These things for my career to keep me in. We're running out of time. And I'm going to do everything you have laid out for me, but you can't lay out a path. And so I'm not going to show up. I'm not going to make up drills. I'm not going to do anything because I had no leverage with this guy,
Yeah.
And so I did deploy as a transpo guy, but because my little team, I was like mid-level, right? And so there are a couple of E6s above me, and I should have been an E6 at this point, but paperwork hadn't shown up yet. So I was waiting for that to happen, and they kind of laughed at me and said, you're going to be with the E4s. And I'm like, no, I was an E5. I'm like, okay, no, you got me. Oh boy, whatever am I going to do? And I walked over to the CI office. And I said, hey, I'm not gainfully employed. I'm a trained counterintelligence agent here as a 88 November. But if you guys can use me, I'm positive my team won't be able to stop you from taking. And this lieutenant kind of blew me off. And he's like, yeah, sure. And I'm like, who would come to you with this kind of a pitch, reading an Alan Dulles book? I mean, come on. And he's like, I don't know who Alan Dulles is. And I'm like, all right, well, let me look in the door and see. Alan Dulles, by the way, for everybody, he basically invents the CIA. So I popped my head in, and sure enough, the warrant officer working there knew him from my last assignment. He's like, Pete. And I look at that lieutenant, and I'm like, yeah, I'm in. I was. And my little team was pissed because I had outmaneuvered them. But of course I would, because I'm a spy, and that's what you do. So, I came back in the reserves, and that was cool. And I did that for a little while, ran out of time, and I got out because they didn't know how to keep me. And then I did some contract work. And then I came back in the Department of the Army. So I raised my hand again and I said, hey, I swear and all that stuff. And worked again in the intelligence field as a gatherer. So my career was kind of perforated. And so I was either in with or for the military.
Right.
And
we lost you.
Yeah, I got you. I'm still here. Don't worry.
No problem.
And I was able to kind of fashion this career where I stayed in the field for a long time, and it's very atypical, right? So my experience allowed me to stay rooted at the ground, learn the ground skills at a level that no one else really could, because they would graduate away from the terrain.
Mhm.
And I was able to stay there. So in tactical field collection, I'm among, if not the most seasoned guy from the last 25 years, because I got to stay and go out every day if I wanted to. And that's where those 1,000 combat missions come from.
Yeah, buddy. I mean, you're doing 1,000 missions in Iraq, Afghanistan, and how the hell you came out of that? You know, I assume you have all your bits and pieces, but man, that's a lot of missions.
Yeah.
I probably did 300 convoy missions, and
Yeah.
to do 1,000 is crazy. Like, that's a
It
lot.
is crazy. And you know how it is. If you go out every day, something could happen at any point in time. So you're wound up all the time.
Yeah.
And whether you're, and like, there's all kinds of things people don't quite get this, that when you go on that convoy, that's a combat mission.
Yep.
You're leaving the safety of the camp and you are geared up. You have rounds in the chamber. You have all the countermeasures turned on because we consider it to be that dangerous. That's not how it is on the post. You're walking around and you don't have to wear a helmet and everything.
PT belt on.
You're running. I'm jogging in my shorts and t-shirt.
The perimeter.
Right? Yeah, that too.
So, man, when you're rolling out, are you rolling out kind of onesie twosies? Or are you going with a whole crew of people? And what's kind of the spy mission for what you were doing?
It's a good question. And it's all those answers really. So I don't want to give the impression that I was out there by myself walking around, because that's not the norm. Have there been times when I've done that? Yes. But the vast majority of the time, I'm trying to find someone I can roll with, because if I can just get out on a regular mission and work within that confine, then great. If I could walk off the post to the neighboring partnered unit, that sounds like I'm out wandering around a town. These are like joint bases. And so, yes, you're leaving the American compound. Like every day I would drive, I worked in a place called Balad. It was a giant airport.
That's where I was.
Just to the north of,
Yeah.
And so there's, as you know, there's an Iraqi side.
Yep.
And when you leave the American side, you are in Iraq, you are in the red zone. And but you're also on a military installation that touches an American installation. So it's safe, right?
Mhm.
Safe.
Yeah.
Or safer or whatever. And I would go there every day, so in my solo missioning, no, not really, like I'm still like fairly well protected. Now, if I had to get the heck out of there and get back to the American camp, that would be dicey because I'm driving towards the machine and that machine might want to, you got an 18-year-old kid trying to keep himself safe.
Yeah.
But so there was some of that, right? But there's also going out with civil affairs and PSYOP guys. And when you do that, we all kind of are kin. We're like, at worst cousins, most likely siblings, right?
Yeah.
And so we're doing similar things. And so we pair well, and they usually have more equipment that I come with, because I usually come with me and a notepad. Maybe it's a small team. Maybe we have one vehicle, but we don't have crew serve weapons because that's not our job. Our job is to go out into town or talk to folks. And so for the most part, I would roll around with whatever combat unit was there and go out on their patrols, and I'm trying to, and this is just kind of a rule of thumb, right? This can be changed day to day, but I am trying to stay either just ahead or just behind the operations physically and time wise, so that if we're going to go to village 15 and we're going to go and install a well, I want to go there first and see if I can get out there. Can I get out there with like the engineer team that's going to go out there? And they're like, yeah, you can't. And then I talk to people and I find out what's going on, because nobody knows these things. We all have these assumptions, but commanders want facts. And so I go out and I talk to them. What's going on? What's going to happen here? What do you guys need? And they never say, we need a well designed by Americans right here on front. They never say that, right?
Yeah.
Now, because they couldn't. They wouldn't even know. Even if they wanted it, they wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
And then we go and install that well. And then I would come back afterwards and say, what happened the other day? No, like, oh yeah, the Americans came down. What did they do? Oh, they installed a well. You guys can use it? Absolutely not. All right. Why? And they're like, well, we touched that thing. The Taliban's going to see that and they're going to know, and that's going to put us on Front Street. We don't want to be on Front Street. We don't want to live near Front Street. And that's not for us. So we'll do it the traditional way, thank you. And so then you tell that to the commander, and you got to imagine that's valuable to a commander. It's like, well, why did we do that? Well, I don't want to get people killed. I'm trying to calm things down, And so that is very typical of the kind of work I would do and I always say it's 4 things. I try to help the commander win more and lose less, help the enemy lose more and win less. And if we can do a better job on wells, then we can do all 4 of those things in one operation.
Man, so you've obviously had all these deployments, getting out of the military, coming out. I mean, myself, I talk a lot about like PTSD, anxiety, depression, all that stuff that a lot of troops deal with. And I imagine I don't understand how some guys come back unscathed. It just doesn't even seem possible to me with the amount of crap people deal with. How was it for you getting out of the military and transitioning into civilian world?
It was tough. It was tough because when I came back, my relationship was falling apart, was basically done, had to figure out it was done, but that whole stabilization force on my life was gone,
Mm-hmm.
And then my money started to go down until I was like, I don't have any money now, and I had a lot of money saved up. And then it's like, I had to live on that because I couldn't find a job. So professionally unmoored, financially unmoored, and then the relationships, and then plus I just had my own stuff that I brought into this whole thing. Cause what was real for me was not reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so I lived in a different place, a different world. I had different rules for myself and how I behaved and what I thought was normal. And so I had to rewire all of that. So it was very dangerous for me. And I was lucky to survive it. I didn't take my life, obviously, but, boy, I got close. I got down that funnel pretty far where that was a real possibility for me. And, it is dangerous. And I get why people are like, I give up. There's nothing else. There's no point in trying. Like if I'd had one more trap door at the right time, that might have been it for me.
Yeah.
And that easily could have, and those trap doors, you don't know, like you're walking on a floor of trap doors all the time.
Yep.
And so you're just waiting, like if something else happens, I probably just call it, and it's terrifying. And I knew I was going down this funnel that my friends had been down. And I didn't know if I had gone past the gate of no return or not, and I thought I hadn't. And I worked hard to find out like how to get back up the hill. But you don't know. You don't know. And I'd become so comfortable with death, after seeing it, hearing about it, witnessing my friends go down the same, I'm still very comfortable with my own demise.
Yeah. Yeah. I got into the psychedelic game to help deal with my PTSD. And so that actually helped me with my view of death. Actually, I'm like, it's not that big of a deal. You're not really dying. You're just kind of transitioning. And that's my take on it from, the experience I had. But how'd you pull yourself kind of out of that, and obviously you're a pretty successful podcaster and you're doing that and talking to some incredible guests.
I don't know that I have. I wouldn't presume to think that I've cleared all the hurdles.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a challenging thing to deal with, but I know I'm in better shape than I was, and I can see how unhealthy I was in a lot of ways that even I couldn't see. So that's the first thing to say, and I still continue to fight for that and treat my well-being as a primary mission in my life, which sounds crazy to say, but we tend to not do that, right? In general, like when you get in your 40s, 50s, you aren't taking care of yourself like you used to. You have other obligations that require more of your attention. Mm-hmm. And so I got my life small. I got it controllable to where, like, for the most part, I had control of a lot of it, and it made me a lot more comfortable. I got rid of trapdoors because I didn't have as much chaos in my life. And that's sort of what I did. Could there still be a series of trapdoors where I fall through a floor, and all of a sudden I'm in the same spot again? Absolutely. I would never say no to that. Do I anticipate it? No. Will my brain degrade to a point where I'm not able to reliably take care of myself in that way anymore? Yeah, that happens all the time. I mean, a car accident, dementia, whatever it's going to be. And all of a sudden, my 10% that I need to keep myself alive here and happy gets taken down by 5% in one instant. And all of a sudden, I'm severely diminished from where I was today, and that can happen. Look, I'm not the oldest guy in the world, but I'm 55. I've had friends drop dead.
Yeah.
And so I'm in a zone where things break and people lose the ability to handle these things. And I bet you know about this, not personally, but like you've seen it. If you don't handle your personal psychosis, it will just grow. It'll go
Oh, yeah.
unchecked, So whatever it is, if you tend towards narcissism or sociopathy or something like that, if you don't tend to that bush will grow until it's no longer alcoholism. Like, okay, fine. You got tons of opportunities to possibly beat it. Right. But if it gets this big, you're not beating it, and it might even matter if you beat it. It may be too late because you destroyed your body in the process. So I understand that those things are available to me, those negative outcomes, because at some point you have to take care of you if you're able, and not everybody's able.
Yeah, it's a constant battle. I mean, like for myself, I struggled for almost 20 years. I was in Iraq and had some stuff go down, not the worst things. Guys have dealt with way worse, but I got into law enforcement. My brother was killed in a car accident a couple years after I got back from Iraq, and he was my rock, and that set me on a complete spiral. And really it was, being able to do these psychedelics that pulled me out of it. But I understand that that's not a cure-all. Life still happens and new things pop up, and it's how you manage those things and really, really staying focused on your mental health, because you can spiral. I've done it.
In a second you can. Yeah. And recognizing that. So my brother took his own life in 2021, and he had a little bit of a pretty steep decline, but we had time. Right. And so I'm going to my own, suicidal idea. I mean, I get daily suicidal ideation. It's in control right now. But I have my down times, and man, the depression comes and gets me. And I was never anxious before, and now I have, anxiety. And so I'm trying to deal with that. And my brother made a serious attempt on his life. And she's like, let's protect you. Let's get you taken care of. We'll worry about your brother next. But realize it's like he has stage 4 cancer. You may not be able to do a thing for him. It may already be too late. And saying those words, if you haven't been in that situation, that will sound crazy. It's like, it's just a choice. That's a temporary or permanent solution to a temporary problem. Yeah. You're adorable. When I talked to my brother, when he's the last 3 times, I'm talking to him, and he wasn't able to sleep, and he couldn't do anything. I'm like begging him, like, it's 2020. You don't have to work. It's the one time when you don't have to pay your house note. Like there's a little bit of money. Take care of you. He was getting what we call 5150 out here in California, which is a horrible thing to do to somebody, but they had to, because he was a danger to himself. And he couldn't slow down long enough. He lost that ability to say, me being alive is better than me being dead for my family, and he was the responsible brother. He was the normal one. But really, when I look back, his addiction problems, whether it was coping or whatever else, it got past the point of control for him, where he wasn't reliably able to be the dependable, stable dude he'd always been. And, became more and more of a tyrant to his family, and really went on this horrible path that, it breaks my heart. And I wanted to be able to save him, but I would talk to him on the phone, and I'm like, hey man, for real, how you doing? And then he would say, I'm doing terrible.
Yeah. What do you do with that?
Nothing. Right. Yeah. And then when you realize, like, I always say this to people, like, way before you get to the end of the rope, call your friends all the time. Go out don't wait until it's, too late. Because when I call, my brother's like, oh, I'm so glad you called. It's great to hear from you. We talked regularly. So, it wasn't like we hadn't talked in years, but that was all for me. Yeah. He was horribly damaged and not getting better. And he was just kind of playing out time and trying to figure out how to, deal with it. He hadn't given up at that point, but I wasn't having any impact on his well-being.
Yeah.
There was no impact for me to have.
No, people have to, once they kind of go down that road, they're the only ones that can save themselves, unfortunately. And whether they figure that out or not is up in the air. You never know what can help you and what will send you right over the edge. And was he a military guy, or was he just struggling?
He was. Yeah, he was a Marine. We had joined, we actually almost walked in the door together the same day to leave MEPS. MEPS is where the last place you leave, like when you're kind of a civilian. Yeah. And so we had done this thing. It wasn't our purpose. It was just our lives took us on alternate paces to the same day for the military. He got delayed a couple of weeks. And so we graduated boot camp and basic almost the exact same time, and then AIT and all these things. So we were on this path over like 6 months of being all like parallel. But yeah, he was in military. He was the Marine. He was super tough. I was so proud of him, and never told him that like I should have.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't have fixed anything, but
he knows.
But yeah, and he was I was his big brother. I'm big brother by like 5 years, and so he looked up to me a lot, and it never even occurred to me because he's just my brother.
Yeah.
But there were times maybe we could have handled our relationship differently. But we also handled it in the way that we did at the time. And, it's not anybody's fault that he was as damaged as he was and chose the end that he chose. I know that he's not suffering anymore, I wish there was a different outcome, but there's not. Yeah. And people die, and sometimes they need to stop hurting. And it's on us to figure out what to do about that after they're gone.
Yeah. People do die. And, I've, like a lot of people, experienced a lot of loss in my life, but it's I don't know your spirituality side of things or anything like that, but I really do believe that this is not it. Your brother's not gone, he's not dead, he's just moved on to a different stage of life. And from the experiences I've had, buddy, you'll see him again. Like, it's not this ain't the end of the road. This is I kind of chalk this up, Earth is kind of like a school for our spirit, is kind of where I go with things. And everybody has their own, they come here for their own reason and have their own experience. And when it's their time, might be my time today. I don't know. You walk out and you get run over and that's it. But you don't want the people around you hurting and that does suck, and you want to be able to help them. But it's not your fault or anybody else's. It's just once people make that choice, it's kind of a done deal, and you try to help them. But
and there's a real thing with dudes in their 40s and 50s where they're like, well, so much for this life, right? And they can rationalize, and you certainly can say they took a lot, during that time before they got to that point, and life is hard, it's wonderful. It's so sweet being in your 50s, but half of my life is on fire and half of my life is wonderful. And they swap which things are which all the time.
Yeah.
And so far I've learned how to manage that. I don't want to act like it's doom and gloom. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I have wonderful lifelong friends. I have my wonderful show, and my life is full of just blessings and richness and wisdom. But it's hard at times.
It's rough. I mean, not to bring it back to this, but this is what I talk about a lot. I was in full blown ayahuasca, and, at the end of my rope, having this crazy experience, and Jesus showed up, and I'm yelling at him, and he's always been around. He's always there. And, I'm not preaching religion, but he's always there. And I was yelling at him in this experience and, like trying to get his attention. Jesus, what's the point of all this? What the fuck's the point of all this pain and suffering? Like, what are we doing here? The only thing he said to me, he looked at me after a while and just said, it's the human experience. And I was like, damn, that's a pretty good answer. Like, we are having this human experience, and there's love and loss and happiness. And like, if everything was always great, we wouldn't be having such an experience. I don't know. I'm not that articulate. I'm trying, but, it's there's a lot of good in this world, and there's a lot of things that we can do to help other people out there. And that is what you're doing with your podcast, man. And I mean, dude, you got some cool guests like Mike Baker and Dan Crenshaw. And like, I know there's way more than that, but those are the couple that jumped out at me, because I'm like, those are Joe Rogan dudes. Like, that's badass,
Yeah. I've been very fortunate. I got into it, early from almost everybody else's point of view.
Yeah.
And I've had amazing guests. The guy I'm going to have on, as soon as I hang up here with you, the guy I'm going to have on is an amazing guest. He's been on Vlad TV, and I get to have wonderful people on my show, and it is remarkable, and it's changed my life, and it's made me want to stay alive. It's made me want to work hard again, in different ways, because my body is beat up from combat, but I found ways to do things that I think matter, and that opens up other opportunities. And so, I love what I get to do. And you're right. Like, these shows that we have and the interactions we get to have, whether it's Dan Crenshaw or, somebody from this famous band or whatever it is,
Yeah.
it's, they're incredible experiences. And sometimes they're just like life-changing. One of the things I do is I sort of deploy myself. Cause I always remember back my sergeant major lessons, like, hey, you got to be portable and deployable. And I'm like, those are the same things. It's like, no, they're not.
Yeah.
No, they're not. You got to be able to carry your things when you get there. You got to be able to move. You got to be able to be sent somewhere with all your stuff and do your job, And so I made my recording studio portable and deployable, and I like to be deployed. And so I go to people's homes and I do it from their house. And it's amazing to be able to sit in someone's house, some notable person who has this beautiful, beautiful home,
Yeah.
And then you can ask them a question like, what's the most mundane thing that you do that if we saw you doing, you'd be like, look at Mr. Mike Baker, and I'm taking out the dog shit,
Yeah.
Because we all have these things, we all have these realities. And so you can look at a wonderful house with a wonderful view, but with that comes a lot of stress and money. Like, it costs $25,000 a month to maintain this place.
Yeah.
What? Yeah. Like, yeah. 25,000. Like, wow. And so you can understand why, like, everybody has, you don't want anybody else's problems. That's a lesson I've learned from my show.
Yeah.
You don't want anybody else's problems. I'll take mine. Thank you very much. And I'm going to put off some things that I think you can solve if I just did them for you, but I don't want the whole load,
No. No, I love it. And everybody's dealing with their own stuff, man, and highs and lows. Even the most successful people you meet. Yeah. I think it was the guy who shot bin Laden came home and the wife was like, take out the trash, buddy. So it's like, we're all just human. Some people are here and there, but just staying focused on mental health and staying focused on, what makes you happy, what makes you a better person, and helping other people is really where I find the most joy is talking to people and providing a little bit of insight. I don't got all the answers by any means, but sometimes I got more answers than others,
that's a real thing. And I love to be of service to other people. One of my best friends that I've met through the show, is a guy named Scott Husing. He's a veteran. He's a commander, Marine in Ramadi during the second battle of Ramadi. And like when I'd gone out to his house to do a show, again, going to somebody else's dojo to do the thing with them is powerful. Yeah. And he's like, hey, I'm flying in or out of LA. I guess he's flying in. And I said, oh, let me pick you up from the airport. I'm right in that area. And he's like, really? You want to pick me? I'm like, yeah. Because I love to help people out. And by then, like during that time, I was really struggling, and so anytime I found time to help somebody else, I'm like, I have value. Because I didn't think I had any value, I couldn't do anything. And I thanked him. I sent him a text, hey, thanks for letting me pick you up. It means a lot to me to be able to do that. It's good for me to be able to help people, and I really appreciate it. You've done me a huge favor today, letting me pick him up from LAX, right? But I meant it, and I still mean it. And those things where I get to help someone else, man, it's powerful. The flip lesson of that is learning how to be a good guest. Let someone help you. Because it might be the thing that gives them a worthwhile thing that day. And it can be a simple thing, just a simple thing. But let someone help you. It's okay to take someone's generosity, someone's help. It's okay. And you really, it's less about you. It's more about them. Like, like my friends will be like, hey, let me take you out to lunch. Okay. Yeah. I don't even offer to pay because they want to pay. They want, like, this is how I'm going to support you,
Yeah.
And so these kind of things, man, because everybody's got $25 for their buddy. Yeah, I got $25 for
sure.
Buddy. We're going to talk for an hour. I'm going to buy you like, hell yeah, I'll do that every time you come up here. Right. But we get so precious that we can do things ourselves that we don't allow someone else to be a hero.
Yep. No, buddy, let somebody else buy your dinner or your lunch. I'm all about it. But I buy a lot of meals, man. No, I help out a lot of people, and it's like being of service. That has been my jam my entire life, as long as I can remember, is helping other people, because that's what relieves my mental anxiety and depression, and helping other people's goes, okay, I'm a good person. I'm just dealing with some shit like a lot of other people. So, man, Pete, we could go on and on. I appreciate it. We didn't even scratch the surface of all the stories that I know you got. And man, I'm going to have to watch a lot of your other stuff, but
well, same. Yeah, and I got a few more minutes if you got anything else you want to cover, but if we're done, we're good.
No. I know you got something else coming up, but I mean, geez, well, you're a Giants fan, and that means a lot to me, so I appreciate that. Do you get
I'm
out
also
to the
a Dodger fan, if you can
Oh
believe that.
God, I know. How's that even possible?
Yeah, what's funny is, because I grew up in the Bay Area, so I like the A's, I like the Giants, I like the Dodgers, I like all those things.
Yeah.
But I'm working on a documentary, and if I get to make it, and you never know until like the damn thing's done. But I'm going to do a documentary on a Giants player, and someone that may go into the Hall of Fame someday as a San Francisco Giants. That my show created this opportunity for me, and making a movie is the kind of hard that I like, where it's like, how will this ever get done? And if I don't do this work, no one else will. And so I'm on these paths with all these different projects I'm doing. And it's incredible how well it aligns with what I do, and my skill set, but it is damn impossible. And it's the kind of suck that guys like us enjoy. There's certain things where like, these things are hard.
Yeah.
And someone has to do them. Otherwise these projects never happen. And so that's what I'm doing. And
do you have somebody helping produce it and funding it and doing all that stuff? Or are you doing it?
This guy is the producer, right? Like there's other producers too, but that's one of the things I do is I produce things now. And so I'm not yet the kind of producers like that bankrolls, because there's producers that have the creation talent, they have the money talent, or they have the team building talent, the project managing talent. And so my job is to get them shored up, these projects, and improved, and then hopefully to the right person to bring in as a partner on the production side or on the money side.
Came to the right.
So you have to
came to the right place, man. My brother-in-law, he's kind of for lack of a term, a baller, and he's doing a couple of different documentaries right now. He just wrapped up one on Rhythmia Life Advancement Center. That's the place I went to for my ayahuasca retreat, and he did a whole docuseries on it. It's coming out pretty soon, but I mean, he's got some other stuff going on with some bank robber guy who robbed 150 banks, and he's just funding it, and he's going to Amazon, Netflix. So, I mean, if you need somebody, let me know.
I'd love to talk offline.
Yeah.
It's exactly the kind of thing that I do, right? I meet people, and so I find projects, and then more and more people come to me and they'll say, and this is just beginning, right? But this is like the KPI. They'll say, "Hey, Pete, do you have something on fill in the blank?" And the answer is always yes. That's the thing I want. Yes, of course I do.
I'll get right back.
Because of my ridiculous show, I have all these people that have these amazing stories. And maybe that story isn't the right story for that person, but they're coming to me because I have ideas.
Yeah.
And I have all these little projects that are some form of development, right? So I get them shored up, I work on them, I pay attention to them, and then you just slowly improve the condition of that story so that it's, it's there and it's viable. And so someone who's like, I don't need to do all of that ground level work. I want to do this work up here. And so I try to bring the bricks up so that it's like a launch pad. Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome. So you have a kind of a co-host. Is that still going on? I was looking at your website. There was another gentleman on there, John.
John and I started the show. John isn't as active as I am. It's my show now. And he's the one that said that. Yeah. But anytime I can have John on the show, I try to have him on. But I also bring in like co-hosts who are guests. And so I'll bring in, like if I'm going to talk AI, I have a person I bring in for that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's nice to have that third dynamic, that positive tension that pulls a conversation in a new way. And so I frequently have either two guests that complement or myself and another host. The other day, I did a show with guys from the Orange County Raptor Center. Basically, they handle all like the owls and the hawks and the falcons. And it's fascinating. So my friend Dave runs a nature conservancy. And so I'm like, Dave? And then I showed up and I sat back in my chair, and then Dave talked to them about all this amazing stuff. I don't even need to do anything. The show was incredible because they're talking about this. All of these guys are bird nerds, and they're losing their minds talking about this stuff. And it's as if I'm not there. And I was glad to not be there. I was glad to sit back and just let them do the whole show, because that's what they need. They need a platform to talk. And then bam, they're talking about how cool backyard falcons are.
Yeah, man.
Backyard falcons.
I'm right there with you. I'm like, I love to talk to all these people who are way smarter than me, but I'm just like, I'm just going to sit back and let you spit your knowledge. And, every once in a while I'll be like, oh yeah, quantum physics. I don't know shit about that.
It's amazing.
What are your main platforms that you're on?
I'm on, I don't promote too many of them. I'm on a bunch, but I don't promote them because it doesn't, people are going to find me. If you want to find me, I'm Pete A. Turner, Break It Down Show. It's not that hard to find.
Yeah.
But I think YouTube is the place I probably push people to the most.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I've got a decent following there, but it's not like it's the flagpole, but all the other ones combined are bigger than the flagpole.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm like, well, whatever. So people are going to listen when they listen. And I quit trying a long time ago to gather an audience in one big spot because it's hard to reliably do because it's not up to me.
Yeah.
It's up to the platforms. It's up to the people that listen. It's up to it's just like, I'm such a tiny little part of that. I'll turn the lights on, let the machine run. And then, when folks come, they come. And when they don't, they don't. And I just keep going. And this is for anybody who does something like podcasting or has a dream. What I offer my clients who pay me to do podcasts for them, or whatever it is you see that light goes on all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Pete's light's on. Oh my gosh, he's producing a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people struggle, and the struggle, like to get 10 shows out, to get 20 shows, 30 shows, 50 shows, 100 shows, whatever it is, 150 shows, that takes a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And so I'm at 2,000 plus. And so I don't really count anymore, right? I have no idea how many it is. But when you want capacity to make a show up, I'm the guy, like whatever you want to do. And I'll tell you the less of this, more of that. No, don't worry so much about that. I'll tell you all that stuff because the hardest part is just doing what you and I are doing, plan it, get it done, get it out the door, get on to the next one. Don't get too precious about any of them and just keep moving forward because the opportunity is down the road and you don't know what it's going to be. You just have to earn the right to get access to it. And you earn that right by taking steps.
Yep. Well, that's what I've been doing. I mean, I basically started this thing in October, but for the last 15 years in my mind, I've always wanted to be on the radio because my dad listened to KGO all the time and, talk radio. I grew up on that, but I've always wanted to do this and finally pulled the trigger and I've just been hammering it. My first episode, it may still be trash, but it's way better than it was, that's amazing how much different it is just in 4 months and subscribers are going up. I'm all about ChatGPT and AI doing all the analytics I can to push it out there. And it seems to be working. I don't know where this thing's going, but it's a side hustle for me right now. And I need to pick it up.
You don't have to know where it's going to go. And I wouldn't even worry about it. I mean, if you think you can nudge it, I maybe would nudge it, but I wouldn't try to pull the show in a direction because you've got to want to do it more than anybody else. And as long as you can do, it's like going to the gym. If you were to describe going to the gym, let's say that you want to go to the gym and get big muscles, but you hate lifting weights, but you're really good at going to the dojo and rolling and doing jujitsu or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, then don't try to be a weightlifting guy. Sure, go lift weights every now and then for fun, but if turns out, and it's not even Brazilian jiu-jitsu, it's Japanese jiu-jitsu. Oh, all right, great. If you go and you do that for 10 years, you're going to be incredible at it. And almost anybody in the earth would lose to you in some kind of fight. And you wouldn't even want to fight at that point anyhow. You'd be like, I don't fight.
Yeah.
I do this because it's a meditation. And so you wouldn't even know the reward going into that, especially if you thought I have to lift weights. I have to force, because then you didn't end up not lifting weights,
Yeah.
And so this is all about going forward. Yeah. So you're super smart. Don't force your show to be something that it doesn't need to be, because you are your show is you, until your show gets so big on its own. You're like, that's not me. That's a different thing. And that's what my show is. Where I'm like, what is that thing? I built that? Holy shit. How did I do that?
Do you, obviously, I would assume you kind of do some monetization with it. Is that a big part of your show for
really.
You personally, or is it just something you do for your own well-being?
It's a little bit of everything. My show is valuable in a lot of ways. This was the hard lesson to learn, was to find the value in my show. Mm-hmm. And so being able to spend time with people, find opportunities, connect people, all these things turn into revenue for me. I don't sell somebody else's mattress. There's nothing wrong with these things, but I don't sell someone else's mattress. Yeah. I don't do things to get 2% of a sale of something. Like the second I open my yap about someone's mattress, pay me to do that. Pay me every time I do that. Well, it's not valuable to you, although it's not valuable to me. The fact that someone happens to click a link and I've got 40 different things I've got to sell. No, thanks.
Yeah.
People can do that. There's people that make money doing that. That's not what I want to do. That's not part of my vision of what the show needs. And believe me, I tried all these things, and I've tried sponsorships. I haven't figured that out. But what does happen is someone will say, Pete, do you know someone who does this? Do you have a project on that? Whatever it is. And then a check will show up with that. And I'm like, look at this check.
All right.
You know? Yeah. And so it is, I always want it to be more, but what my show provides me is enough. And it's incredible. It blows me away all the time, the gifts it gives me.
I love it, man. Well, Pete, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. I'd love to chat with you again. I will be watching your show and learning from you, because you're doing the thing. So I appreciate you.
Well, you're doing it too. Call me anytime, and then we'll talk about anything you want to talk about. I may not be as smart as ChatGPT, but I've done it on ChatGPT.
I appreciate that. All right. Thank you, sir.